Music is the language of emotion. As humans, we are so easily able to recognize the feelings evoked by sound, even if we're not musically literate ourselves. Composers for films and games harness this power of music to communicate emotional context to the audience, and sometimes the score can completely dictate the meaning of the piece. Shadow of the Colossus is the perfect example of this. So in this episode of GameScore Fanfare, we're going to take a look at how the game's soundtrack speaks to our emotions and shapes the story being told. The game opens with the main character Wanda travelling horseback to the Forbidden Land, an isolated and desolate region long abandoned by humanity. This ancient no-man's land is represented in the music by the bouzouki, an instrument which composer Kow Otani saw as old and ethnically ambiguous. Although the bouzouki is actually a rather modern instrument and has associations with Greek and Irish Celtic music, it is closely related to its descendant, the pandura, which has had variations pop up not only throughout Europe, but across the Middle East and Asia too, as early as the 4th century BCE. Wanda is travelling with the lifeless body of a girl, intending to ask the god Dorman to resurrect her. Dorman agrees on the condition that Wanda slays the 16 colossi that roam the land. This opening scene is scored by a mournful piece, featuring the bouzouki, strings, organs, church bells, and a choir. It is quite reminiscent of a requiem, a piece of music originating in the Christian Catholic Church for use in funerals. This music is referred back to throughout the game after defeating a Colossus, cementing the theme of death and loss, and reminding you of the purpose of Wanda's mission. Once the setting and story is established, the game begins in earnest. Your first job is to locate the Colossus, which you can do by holding your sword in the air and following to where the light gathers. You are searching, exploring, climbing, but aside from your horse Agro, you are alone. There are no side quests to complete, no friends to make, no enemies to fight outside of the 16 colossi. It is a lonely adventure, which is emphasized by the score. It's silent. I've talked previously about the roles silence can have in an adventure game, but in Shadow of the Colossus, it's almost entirely a mood setter, making this empty land feel all the more empty. In a way though, the silence also serves as an encouragement, being a constant reminder that this is solely up to Wanda alone to complete his mission. This part doesn't happen in every case. Some of the more aggressive colossi will attack Wanda on sight, leading straight into confrontation. But for the other half, the more docile colossi, there will be a moment of discovery and observing the Colossus in its natural habitat. This would usually be an opportunity for the score to start building the energy with some tense, suspenseful music. Frantic strings and drums growing to a crescendo is what you might expect. That's not the case here though. The music is actually quite calm, reflecting the surprisingly peaceful nature of the Colossus. And it's rather ambient in nature too, mimicking how these living landscapes exist in harmony with their surrounding ecosystem. The music speaks not to the potential danger of the colossi, but of their majesty. This is the beginning of an inner conflict within the player. By taking a moment to watch the colossi and have it cast in an innocent light through the tender music, you briefly think of it not as a monster to slay or a boss to defeat, but as a living creature. It plants a small seed of empathy within you, a moment of hesitation and gathering courage to take down this giant. But you persevere. This is it. This is what you came for, and the soundtrack delivers on the emotion in spades. It's a grand, melodic orchestral music with swelling strings and triumphant horns, a total contrast to everything that has come before, juxtaposing the quiet, calm and empty with the enormous, loud and exciting. This makes the Colossi feel even more gargantuan and helps to catapult this moment into the spotlight. It is a cathartic release to have a score that finally lets loose and actually sound in line with how you feel. In a word, heroic. Up until this point, the music has worked against this feeling. There is no adventure in the silence, nothing intimidating about the encounter tracks that would spur on this conflict. For the first time, the music isn't subverting your expectation, but driving directly into that emotion. It is supportive and righteous. That twinge of doubt from earlier is entirely forgotten when you're in the moment. Scurrying across the beast in search of its glowing weak points, you raise your dagger high for the final blow. And... as the slain Colossus heaps to the ground, there is no celebratory victory fanfare congratulating you on your achievement. Instead, we get another requiem, funeral music. This connects the death of the Colossus with when we first heard the requiem, carrying the lifeless girl to the altar and petitioning Dorman. And so it represents the completion of this mission, or at least 1/16 of it. But further than that, using the same music suggests that the life of the Colossus is comparable to that of the human girl. You have this moment of revealed clarity that perhaps Wanda's mission is not as righteous as you initially thought, but a selfish one. The realization that the creature just slain was perfectly innocent, many of them not even fighting back in self-defense, just attempting in vain to shake you off. This moment is core to the experience of Shadow of the Colossus. The musical bait and switch turns your moment of victory into one of introspection and regret. You feel conflicted, guilty for valuing the life of one over another. It brings into question the moral ground on which Wanda, and by extension the player, stands. From here on out, you view the world in a different way, tainted with the regret of a guilty conscience. The quietness that once defined your loneliness is now deafening as you are left alone with your thoughts to dwell on your actions. Instead of encouraging you on your mission, it now casts doubt over it. Encountering the Colossus no longer feels calm and peaceful, but mysterious and sinister. And the climactic battle with the Colossus tracks start to sound less heroic and more villainous and tragic in tone. Wanda's transition from hero to villain is told in-game, through the ending cutscene and also through his character model, which becomes increasingly corrupted as he kills more Colossi. But it's through the music that the audience gets to experience that transformation for themselves. You feel like you're the bad guy, because the music is so able to toy with your emotions and give you a guilty conscience for your actions. Shadow of the Colossus will be remembered as a landmark game that bucked design trends and blurred genre lines. But what makes it so special to me is its story. Without its soundtrack though, it's just a David and Goliath story with an added damsel in distress. The music is what elevates it, to become one of the most deeply moving experiences that I've had in a game.